and I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, and everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
Well, we're not going to calm down, Tyler. We're certainly not going to calm down now. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast, live on a Thursday night. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network, as we are got a lot of interesting things to talk about. New GM in Calgary. And, of course, we've got one representative of the Stanley Cup final. Will we, by the end of this podcast, have the final set? And, of course, the man that made the trade of a lot of people's vote for the Conn Smythe is in the crosshairs of Toronto. The synchronicity out of all of this is just fascinating. We'll get into all of that. We will say hello to Devin. Hello, Devin. How the hell are you?
I'm doing, good. some good news in Flames land, and I'm really happy to be back on.
How are you feeling?
Knee is progressing. And I was telling Sean before in the pre-show that kind of had a bit of a milestone day yesterday with my recovery. So pretty happy about that. And should be getting my elevator back up and running just in time.
Great.
Yeah. 6 flights of stairs has been hell every day.
Yes. When Devin signed on into our chat thing here, he was limping around, so I was like, I was very happy to see that he was mobile without crutches.
Yeah, fuck crutches. I'm gonna burn those bastards.
Yeah. Sean, how are you doing?
I'm good, Kev. Yes, it's nice to see that we're getting closer to the end of the season, to the Stanley Cup Finals here. We've had a very, very interesting and confusing conference finals. Our co-host Chris saying that he couldn't quite figure out who was going to be the favorite in either of these matchups is looking very confused right now, because we've got a sweep and the other team's up 3-0. The other series is 3-0. So yeah, it's it's a little bit confusing right now, and it's great, because that's what we want. We want unpredictability.
Yeah, well, Jake Ottinger is dressed up as Aiden Hill, I think, and people think Aiden Hill might be dressed up as Jake Ottinger in the Stars Vegas series. Anyway, some phenomenal hockey was played between Carolina and Florida, and my heart breaks for Carolina in a lot of ways, because they played it well enough to win. If they win the first game, this series is totally different. But just they didn't get the luck. They couldn't score. And for that, I feel really bad for Carolina.
Andrei Svechnikov injury finally came back and bit them in the ass.
Yeah. And then when Jacob Slavin went out, I was like, they're done. It really, really is over.
Oh, okay. Can we just talk about that hit for a few minutes here? Because, as someone who loves physical hockey, who that's that was the style of hockey I played when I played. Dev, that was the style of hockey you played when you played. Oh, that is textbook, clean, just beautiful hits. Like he's going in on the forecheck. And just Slavin just made a mistake there and just didn't have the full ice awareness and who's coming down forechecking and just got destroyed.
It was the cleanest, probably one of the, like Sean, you said, textbook hit I've seen in a very long time. And I Slavin, the reason why he wasn't paying attention is because the puck was bouncing on him and not quite steady. So took a split second to try and steady the puck, but holy fuck, that was way too late.
Yeah.
You had the Bennett train coming down, and God, he's vicious.
We've had in these playoffs, we've had two of the most like beautifully clean hits that are just like, it sucks that Timo Meier like missed I think one game. It sucks that Slavin was injured for the rest of that game. But two of the absolutely cleanest, hardest checks we've seen in years. And it's just, I hate seeing players get injured. I would much rather see those hits and them stand up, because there are hits like that where they do. But textbook clean, beautiful. That's part of what I love about hockey.
Yeah, I had no problem with the hit. I just felt so bad for Slavin, and I felt so bad for Carolina because, good grief, they just could not. They had literally no luck in this series, and I mean, it's going to be an interesting offseason in Carolina, I guess, because I mean, I don't think that they're rebuilding. They're probably reloading, and
I think the reload is the right word there. If you're going to go with a RE something, the reloads is the right word there, because this series is completely different if you got a healthy Andrei Svechnikov in there. So they have decisions to make in net, because they just signed. They do have Kokachev assigned to, and but they have to make a decision on whether it's Freddie or Antti Ranta going forwards. So
they have to make a decision on Aho as well.
This was the coming out party for Aho.
Yeah, I know, but Carolina doesn't like to pay people.
They have no issues paying top end players. It's those middle players that they won't pay.
So you're gonna give Kotkaniemi fucking 4.82 for the next 7-8 years?
I think that was a mistake. That was definitely that was a cut. I think that was we're gonna fuck over Montreal. Montreal's like, we'll just take the picks.
Yeah, because if you look at the future of Carolina, you have a bunch of old guys coming off the books like Jordan Staal, Paul Stastny, and Derek Stepan. And outside of that, you have 5 players out of the entire team after next year that have contracts. Everyone else is up. So the way that they've structured it is, I think, brilliant, to be honest.
They've got this season, and then they have to make a decision. Aho, I think they will end up paying. Tara Vine is the one that they will have to make a decision on. Aho is only 25 right now. Even if you do sign him to one of those 8-year deals, even if I'm not the biggest fan of those long-term deals for mid to late 20s guys, I think if anyone's going to be worth it, Aho's probably in that discussion. Tara Vine is 28 right now. He's going to be UFA after next season, as is Aho.
And Tara Vinen, he was up and down the lineup this entire season. He wasn't consistently in the top two lines. He was very fluent within all four lines. So, I mean, if you're going to walk away from one guy, that might be one guy that you not walk away from, or you try and trade.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do make a move on Teravainen this offseason.
Well, you're going to have to pay Seth Jarvis. You probably have to pay
Jarvis. What's interesting is like they don't have any they've got Stahl, who I'm sure they can probably get at a decent rate on a short-term deal. He's 34. He's not going to be looking to sign a long-term deal at this point. None outside of that, in terms of this, there's no one there that, like, in terms of skaters, I don't see anyone there being significant enough that they're going to be putting long-term dollars on them. So they're going to have the long-term cap room to make decisions on Seth Jarvis and Marty Necas and Sebastian Aho. I think they're going to have more than enough room to make those work.
Yeah, they're a well-run organization. They will be back at this point again. I don't think there's anything to worry about with Carolina. The person I'm going to be fascinated with, and we'll change here. I saw some tweets that said Jesse Puljujärvi got to the conference final, and the Oilers didn't. Jesse Puljujärvi didn't play a single game in the conference final. I just want to point that out, as if you're going to laugh at the Oilers about that, he at least should play. And the analytics darling on the analytics team didn't play. So I'm quite fascinated what they do with Puljujärvi next year, because that would have been the organization that everyone thought he would have made.
I think he'll just be signing a 1 or 2 year deal. He's 25. So I think it'll be a 1 or 2 year deal, sort of show me deal with him. I think they do think there's more to him. But because remember, I think Kotkaniemi, again, when they brought him in, he was definitely not playing that much when he first was brought in as well. I think the way Brind'Amour handles these players is you have to show me that you deserve to play. And sometimes these players work out and sometimes they don't. And like I would say, Ethan Bear was someone who didn't quite fit into that mold. Like he's looking looking good as a Canuck, and I think he's going to look good whether he's a Canuck or elsewhere. But within that Carolina Hurricane system and that process, he just didn't quite jump up. Although it was with that system too. He at least on the blue line, there's a lot of depth there, and it's tough to jump over players like Jacob Sillaven, Brent Burns, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, who's another player that they're going to. Shea and Pesce are also players they're going to have to make decisions on going forwards, and then they had players like Jalen Chatfield step up and become just like good steadying defensemen for the rest of the rest of the defensemen in that group. And that's not Ethan Bear's style, but for Puljujärvi, I think there's room for him next year.
They'd be stupid not to be a gamble on him. He has arb rights. It's going to be 1.5, I think, at most for 2 years if they really want to go there. Like Sean said, he's 25 years old. He's a first-round draft pick. He got to see what he can do. He only played 17 games within the Carolina organization this year too. And with Brind'Amour at the helm, I think you can get a bit more out of Puljujärvi, and you got to hope that he could be a third or second liner at best.
We'll see. I'm not as confident as you are that the Hurricanes will be bringing him back, but we'll see.
I think they will. I think if he was a UFA, I think you'd be right there, Kev. I think but to say that they won't qualify him, his qualifying offer is $3 million. So I think they will qualify. I think what they'll do is they'll work a longer term deal, a 2 to 3 year deal, at sub that. And if they'll try and find that. If not, they'll do a 1 year, $3 million deal, and go from there. It's not like they're like where Carolina's at with the cap. They have the room for that. They have the room to take the gamble on Puljujarvi. They've got, with the way they've got this set up, and Eric Tulsky has a lot of props for this. They've got just over $24 million in cap space.
That's fair. I mean, yes, I guess you can take that gamble.
Room, and it's not because they've got 11 forwards signed going into next season, and some of them won't even play in the NHL. So they've got room to take a flyer on a Puljujarvi on a 1 year, $3 million deal if they can't get a longer term deal, sub $3 million, or a deal that makes sense for them longer term work.
Fair. Well, Dan's going to be coming on shortly, but I was going to transition through speaking of Sam Bennett, but we went on to Carolina Hurricanes. But I do think the Hurricanes will be back. No question about it. That's a damn talented team. Don't worry about the Hurricanes. But the Toronto Maple Leafs have become one of the fascinating offseason stories in a blink of an eye. We questioned whether Kyle Dubas would be back. Kyle Dubas said, no, thank you. I'm on my way. I would rather not. Or actually, no, correction. Brendan Shanahan said, if Kyle Dubas isn't sure, then I'm not sure. So we'll have to move on from him. And now there's a lot of people with a lot of questions about the Toronto Maple Leafs, Devin. And I guess I kind of wanted to hear where you're at.
Oh, what a shit show. God. As far as the Dubas decision from Brendan Shanahan, I understand his thought process there, but the only way that I would think that it would make sense is if Dubas was just coming in for a paycheck. That's the only reason. That's the only reasoning that I would have for Shanahan just to let him go, because he's questioning whether or not he wants to be here or not. If you want to be here, you want to be here. But if you don't, then get the fuck out. But I don't think that's in Dubas's repertoire. I don't think that that's who he is as a person. He's been a part of this organization. Well, he was a part of Toronto for 9 years, and I believe it was 5 years that he was GM. And you think that he has enough pride to kind of come back and show up all these naysayers that's saying that they couldn't do with the big four up top. And I mean, obviously they didn't, which is completely fair. But I don't know. The reasoning behind Shanahan's decision to get rid of Kyle Dubas and not extend a contract towards him, I think was, I don't know, that whole press conference was just a clusterfuck. And I mean, as far as our podcast goes and media goes, we love it because it's something to talk about. We give shit to people who are 100% honest with the media and with the public. But then when you get the pucks in deep bullshit from the players, then we get upset with it. It's just the same old shit. So yeah, but I digress from that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that Dubas could have done a bit more here, but it was one of those things where it's okay. It's either going to be Dubas, it's going to be Keefe, it's going to be both of them, or it's going to be a massive trade with. You're not trading Matthews unless he wants to stay, or unless he doesn't want to stay. Tavares isn't going anywhere. Nylander's your best valued player within that top four highest paid players on the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then so that leaves Marner. And there'd be a bunch of teams out there who would love to have Mitch Marner on their team, or William Nylander. So those are the only two players on the Maple Leafs that you would be thinking about trading. But
Marner has a no movement clause that kicks in July 1.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to jump on that as soon as you can. But as far as I think they might have, the reasoning behind firing Dubas wasn't quite where I would like it to be, but the options of, I think the only way that they do go is hire Brad Treliving as the next GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And from a Maple Leafs perspective, I think that's a great idea. He's one to swing for the fences, and especially at this pivotal point within this organization, the franchise needs to. It's win now mode, not too much different than Calgary is. So he'd be jumping into a very similar situation that he was in a year ago or 2 years ago when you had Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk on their last year of their deals, and you got to kind of make a decision, right?
Dan has joined us.
I heard you say Calgary 3 times, so I appeared.
You're better at showing up than Devin is when we say Treliving 3 times.
Yeah.
It's because he's been eating Boston pizza.
Yeah. I guess this is okay. So, we'll get into this a little bit later in terms of Canadian media, but this is the challenge with Brad Treliving Craig Conroy brought it up in the press conference as well. The handling of Johnny Gaudreau and the early results of the Matthew Tkachuk trade don't put Treliving in a fantastic light. And you're in a similar situation with Austin Matthews that you are with Johnny Gaudreau. In terms of you need to make a decision here whether or not you sign him or not. Now, I would think that there's a better chance that Austin Matthews would sign more than Johnny Gaudreau would sign in Calgary. I think that's a fair. A lot of
it depends on coaching, because if we're talking about this, I think the biggest thing that the biggest issue I have with Brad Treliving and over the past 2 years is his ability to manage up.
And he's going to need to manage up in Toronto. And he's not only going to need to manage up to 1, he needs to manage up to 3. And I understand where you're coming from, Devin, but I do feel there's some red flags with Treliving now.
So with the Gaudreau situation, it's a completely different thing. It's very similar but very different because Johnny Gaudreau, his wife now was pregnant. There's so many different differences between the two players, right? It can't just be, Brad Treliving fucked up because X, Y, or because, Johnny Gaudreau didn't sign and Austin Matthews might not sign. There were so many different things that were involved within that. We've been taught, we on this podcast, we've talked about it for years, that it takes that it's not just about the product on the ice. It's about the transition into a brand new city. What type of situation you're in, your marital status, if you're having kids. Look at Jacob Markstrom, for fuck's sakes. Once he had a kid, he was lights out. Before that, he was shit. He was dog shit. And that had nothing to do with him, his ability to stop pucks. But it seemed like there was a transition there. There was a switch that kind of happened, right? So if you're looking at it, broad spectrum, then yes, they are very similar, but there's way too much more. There's layers to it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say what Kevin said and saying, let's look at Treliving in terms of, the Gaudreau thing. I don't know what we're looking at there. Gaudreau didn't want to be here. What do you do? He's not a dog. You can't say sit, stay for 7 years, stay, good player, right? What do you do? The guy didn't want to be here. He's a free agent. He's going to leave. So, Brad couldn't do anything. Brad can't manage that. The one I think we need to look at there is the Tkachuk deal. Tkachuk wanted out. Brad did the best he could in the scenario he was given. And now we can look at that with this playoff, and maybe it's not right, but with the scenario that he was given, with the 10-team list he had, that's the one I think you judge Tree on of those two. And
let alone you have, Brad Sutter was not a Tree living pick. We know this.
No.
Right?
Let's be honest, the first full year of Sutter was fine, right? The Flames got further than they have in a long time.
But in terms of the fact that he wasn't a Sutter pick, that's where I'm getting at in terms of managing up. Like in terms of the Gaudreau and Tkachuk issues, it's tough based off of the fact, but based off of the fact that the Dome is far overdue for a new arena. It's a shithole, but it's my shithole, and I love it. Like it's a fun place to go watch hockey. But in terms of like, I remember what was it? Uyghur? Did they announced they brought him in and they talked about him and they showed the locker room and everyone's like, that's a fucking NHL locker room.
Meanwhile, in Arizona,
but it's there's only so much you can do with those ones. But the managing the fact that he wasn't able to hire, like they hired a coach, they hired the coach in spite. Mm-hmm. And yes, the 1 year worked, but afterwards it was an absolute disaster.
And he couldn't fire him.
Yeah,
and he couldn't fire him.
And I think what you guys are saying about managing up, Calgary and Toronto, I think, have a very similar internal structure, right? I mean, when Tree started, he answered to Burke and he answered to King. And now he's answering to John Bean and he's answering to ownership. And I think, some of these GMs aren't used to that. And some of the guys apparently they've talked to aren't used to that. So I think that one of the benefits Toronto would get from Tree, he understands that internal politics. He knows how to work in that environment.
And the other thing is that you have an ownership group here who seems to be very hands off, and all of a sudden when they're not hands off, they're fucking for lack of a better word, balls deep within the organization and making going around what they hired a guy to do. So to me, that's not a Brad Treliving issue. That's an organizational issue.
For sure.
Yeah, but still, if you're that GM or president of hockey ops, you need to find a way to manage up and find a way to get to not have the situation where they're hiring around you for the coach. And yes, it may not be, it might not have been, no matter who was there, they would have done that. But it's still a question mark at this point in terms of if you're looking at Treliving as the next Leafs GM, his ability to manage up is still a question mark.
And if you look at a lot of teams who have a president of hockey ops, most of them have GM experience. Shanahan really doesn't. And I can see a lot of potential GMs saying, well, if I'm coming in, why do I have to answer Shanahan? I'm a winning guy. I know what I'm doing. So I think that Brad is one of those guys that will be able to navigate those politics and not really have the issue with Shanahan or be able to find that middle ground.
I guess my one question would be, I don't know how to, it may sound ridiculous. Is there a legitimate trade package? Because I think that there's a legitimate argument to trade Austin Matthews. Like if he doesn't want to come, obviously, I think you can get a hell of a lot for him. I think you could solve. I don't know if you could solve all of the world's problems with a Marner Nylander trade, but you might be able.
But who's your number one center if you trade Austin Matthews?
Well, you got to ask for that. That's the thing, right? You got to get one back.
Yeah, but our team's willing to be giving up an actual number one. If they have a number one center, why are they going after Austin Matthews?
Depends on what their needs are, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just look at that and like if you are trading Austin Matthews, you're going on a full-on retool. I think that's the right RE word for the Leafs. If you're going that, you're going up for a retool. Because John Tavares at 32, he's not a number one center anymore. He's an okay second line, a solid second line center, but his wheels are going. So I don't know if he can. You're going to need a true number one center in front of him. So if you're going to do that, you're looking at a 2-3 year window where you're going to be retooling there, trying to figure out how you can get that number one center back. But if Austin's not willing to sign, then you're going to have to be, you're basically your hands forced. And if you're looking for a pro for the Treliving to Toronto thing, is I think he's going to learn from the Gaudreau Tkachuk situation and make a proactive move as opposed to being reactive.
Well, the thing with the Gaudreau, though, like I have a really hard time with that comparison. Once again, I understand that the optics look very similar, but that's not the case. They were very close to getting a deal done within the summertime. They were actually Gaudreau was going to build a house here, and was very close to. So they're similar but different. Once again, you don't say, for instance, you do trade Austin Matthews. You do have William Nylander as a potential, yes, he's not a number one center, but he is a 1B center within this league, I believe. And I think one of the things that Nylander actually might need, if this does go through, or if Nylander does get traded, I'd be very curious if he gets anointed the guy or one of the guys, not the fourth one in the top four, but having a more prominent role. I'd be curious on what he could bring to, might not even be the Leafs, but a different organization. And like having that responsibility might be a game changer for how he plays.
I think the Leafs can get away with putting Nylander. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not actually trying to compare the specifics of the Matthews versus Gaudreau situation, just in terms of reading in terms of like the pro for Treliving, in terms of reading the situation, going, okay, if he's not committing to us this summer, then we're making a move, like making a proactive, being more proactive as opposed to going, okay, I guess we're just going to go for it and see what we can do. Because if you're coming in to a situation like the Leafs have here, where they only have 7 forwards signed through next year, 7 NHL forwards signed through signed to contracts next year, and then you've got 2 key forwards that need new big deals going into the season after. The board's pretty clear for a retool. The board's pretty clear for an ability for Brad Treliving to put his stamp on this team, which could include either a Nylander or Austin Matthews trade.
Pending ownership would approve that, which I think after arguably the most successful season in Leafs, memory for a lot of us, I can't see ownership approving that right away. I have a feeling they're going to be told. And I mean, if Brad gets his way, I think you guys are all right. I think they would say, let's learn from Johnny, ask him for a season. You're willing to stay. If not, fine, we'll find you a home, which the Flames arguably maybe should have done with Johnny, or at the deadline, ask him that. But I have a feeling that Brad's mandate might be keep Matthews around and try to go for this once more.
And, you could kind of, there's been connections made, especially from my 2 favorite teams. What was one of their biggest downfalls? Their defense. And what youngish defenseman in his prime is here and who's been on the trade talk ever since the season ended? Noah Hanifin. And I'm not saying one across the board, of course not, of Nylander for Noah Hanifin, but there's definitely a connection there, and that could be made, especially if Treliving's going to be there. Right.
And you got to remember that Hanifin was a guy that Tree went out and got, so we know the Tree likes him, right?
Tree also went out and got Lindholm too. I just want to point that out.
And if we go that way, I mean, there's a lot of these guys that are on Toronto already. Yarncroke, Giordano, Brody, that were Treliving guys. And I think as much we're talking about Matthews, I mean, I don't think Toronto at one point, Calle Yarncroke was their top line left wing. Like, I think they've got some lineup issues already that they're going to need to solve. I mean, Yarncroke's not a top line. At one point, Giordano was playing left on the 4th line. That's not where he fits. So there's already some lineup issues there that I think even if you took 1 year to do this and trade Matthews at the deadline, there's still going to be some issues with the lineup either way that need to be solved. And that's why I think it is time for maybe a bit of a rebuild for Toronto and say, you know what, let's retool, let's rebuild, whatever you want to call it. Let's take one more crack at this and see if we can get there by the deadline.
Whether it's Treliving or whoever else they bring in as GM, I think the moves are made this summer. I don't think they wait till the deadline, because if they wait till the deadline and this team and the Toronto team is in the running again, trying to make a move for trying to trade away a key piece in there, that is the fan base will turn. Like it's not
base
going
is already
to work.
fucking volatile, man. It's
Well,
one of those
I mean,
things.
it is, but if you're in the middle, if say the Leafs are like, we looked at Boston having an absolute miraculous historic season, they're not going to have that again. If they're in the running for the division and they're like, and then you have and they trade Matthews or Nylander at the deadline, that's going to be an absolute just tire fire. Not to mention the fact that Matthews has a full no move that kicks in July 1. I think what's going to happen, I think we're going to see a bit by the time the draft is over. Whoever is in charge of Toronto is going to put their stamp on this team. Whether either they're going to stay the course and move forwards with Matthews and or Nylander, or they're going to move one or both.
And I disagree with you that that's probably what Tree wants to. I just wonder how much autonomy Tree will have. And I think that might be where they say, you know, we'll do this one way, and if not, then I get my way at the deadline or something like that. And it was mentioned earlier they need defense. I think Toronto needs goals. You're
down to like probably two teams that a player like Austin Matthews is going to want to go to.
Well, but if Toronto's out of the race, I think he'd be open to going to a lot of teams that would be in the race.
Yeah. I just don't see that. I don't see Toronto being that.
No, but even in the summer, there's not a lot of teams that have 11 million either. Like, it's not going to be easy to move that Matthews contract one way or the other.
It's going to be a lot easier to move it in the summer when you can go above the cap by a certain amount to make sure that and then make the moves after, or like set those moves up, as opposed to the deadline when there's like literally Matthews has control.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do it now. We're not now, but you got to do it in the summer anyway. But
it's very similar. It's very similar to Calgary and what Calgary has to do right now, right? You have Lindholm, you have Backlund.
Mm-hmm.
That you got to make those moves before. But if you can't, then you can't. Right? If you don't get the autonomy from ownership, or there's some sort of middling ground in between, oh, well, I do want to stay, but on this term, and it doesn't happen. And then the player says, oh, I don't want to be doing contract talks during the season. I want to focus on it, on the season. I mean, there's so many different variables. The one thing about trading at the deadline, yes, Matthew has autonomy, but you also have an ownership group with a shit ton of money, and he can retain a shit ton of salary if that's the case, if you're going to get something big back.
The thing with Lindholm and Backlund for the Flames, though, is that Lindholm does not have any trade protection. So
that's fair.
If things go awry and they want to make moves at the deadline with him, they have all the power there.
No,
Backlund has a 10-team trade list. So you've got 10 teams there, and he can it'll literally come down to 2 or 3 teams there as well, because you can definitely put together a 10-team trade list where 7 to 8 of them are basically non-starters for the Flames.
And Sean, I think that the return for a guy like Backlund, I don't know if we want to go here, but I think that's pretty well defined. I think that you're going to get a similar offer from a lot of teams because everybody needs something like that. So I think all 10 teams will get that.
A solid third middle six, third line, got like ideally third line center who can play up.
Yeah, and I think with Lindholm, the great advantage for the Flames there is that money, right? I mean, he's making less than half of what, most first-line centers are making. So I think the Flames are going to have a lot more leverage in that deal. But I think in either case, I mean, if Matthews does have a no trade and he wants out, if he wants to go somewhere, he'll put 10 teams in that are better than Toronto at that point if he wants out. And I don't think it would be hard to make that deal as much at the deadline.
And there's always obviously like if he's going to say to any other teams that he wants to go to, and let's say True Living's the guy that is the GM, there's still negotiation power within that, being like, hey, Austin, I have this option. This is the best for the Maple Leafs. Are you able and willing to waive that trade list and open up that option? You know, there's always negotiation that can happen.
And
right?
I don't know if the trade list is one that's been pre-submitted or if he submits at the time. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I mean,
it's Matthews said by after July 1, Matthews will have a full no move clause. So there's nothing there. Okay. Like he can literally just say no.
Yeah, but we've seen guys in the past who've wanted, out and waive that. And I think if the Leafs are in a position to deal him at the deadline, I think he'd be in a position to say, yeah, I'll waive it to go to a good team.
Yeah, he would. But again, it just comes down to where the Leafs are at too.
For sure.
And like if he feels that they're in the same position as this other team, he could say no and then pick his team in the summer.
Maybe.
Well, and that'd be such a shit move on his part. I think he's better. There's all semantics. This is all just debate, but I think he's better than that, right? And the one thing that I do have to say about Matthews is that the last game and a half that they played in the playoffs actually saw a fucking another gear to that man. That guy was playing better. Those last game and a half, I've never seen him actually put in that gear and understand this is what it takes to fucking win. Even though they lost, I saw that, and that is a game changer. And it'd be hard for me to say, okay, yeah, if he's not in, trade him. Realistically, you have three amazing players: Nylander, Marner, and Matthews. Tavares, I don't give a shit. I'm sorry. Yeah, he's making $11 million. Sure. That's just a cap hit. But
he's a second-line player at this point.
My whole point it doesn't even matter with him. Yeah, he's a good leader. Yeah, hoorah, fucking great. But you have those three players for one more year. If you can better your back end, because that's where the biggest downfall was, better your back end. Because Giordano playing fucking north of 18 minutes a night, that's unacceptable. That can't happen anymore. He's 39 years old. He's going to be 40 next year. So
there was one game he played 4 minutes in this playoffs.
Totally, right? It's one of those things where if he is within your bottom pairing defenseman, okay, he's a tweener right now. He can eat popcorn and he can come in every once in a while. But if you're relying on him going into the season to play those types of minutes, that's a big loss. So if my whole point is that if you can get something for one of those players to help your back end, fucking do it.
So the team that has the money right now is the Coyotes. So we move Matthews to the Coyotes, save the Arizona hockey, and Gary's happy again. Is that the way it's going to work?
They're going to Houston. We know this.
Matthews for Clayton Keller.
Plus, Sean.
So
plus.
Keller to 7th. Plus? That's plus. Yeah. And it's a conditional 7th. It's only if the trade's made on a Tuesday and Matthews wearing a green shirt on the draft day.
The thing with the Leafs too is they're in a situation where outside of Morgan Riley, they have no one signed past 3 years. And outside of Morgan Riley and Kelly Yarncroc, they have no one signed outside of 2. Of note, right? So it's they could totally blow this up and retool, rebuild, or whatever reconstruction word you want to have.
Which word did you use for Carolina? Because I think that's the word.
It's regional.
Reload. You reload with this group.
I just don't know if you're going to sell that to ownership after their most successful season in a long time.
It'd be hard.
It would be. I'm just saying, is like the setup is there. I don't see it happening. If they had done this, if say this was 2 years ago, or like going into last off season, where you have the Bedard potentiality, you could. I just don't think that we're not getting another generational player within the next 2-3 years here.
And maybe that's what, maybe those are the discussions that are happening now in the GM searches. Who's willing to do what? And ownership may want to go one way, and it's a matter of, do you want to play that game, or are you going to go, rogue on what Shanny and the owner wants?
Well, and the other guy who we haven't really talked about is Brandon Pridham. He's the assistant GM he's assistant GM right now. And I think that would be also another good pick because he's been in the system for, I think 4 years now. And he's been a really good assistant GM. So, it could not be just Brad Treliving because he's a front runner, but it could be an internal thing like our internal hire like the Calgary Flames did.
And I think
based off of what Shanahan said, I'm not expecting a Brandon Pridham hiring.
Hey, he got to go through that process. Sorry, Kev. What you
said? They will go through it. I'm just not expecting it. I could be wrong.
I would like to throw one more name into this. He hasn't been in the league for a while, but he got a team.
Peter Chiarelli.
What about Mike Gillis?
I don't think that's the right guy for Toronto.
I think he is. I think he is.
Sean. I think he would be perfect. I think he would be better than
but with a caveat. If they're actually willing to buy into his whole ordeal, because he has specific things that he wants autonomy over, and making sure that if he does it, it's done his way. If they're willing to do it, he'd be the perfect guy for that organization. But I just don't see it happening.
It wouldn't happen with the everything that has been brought into light with Kyle Dubas trying to go around Brendan Shanahan to get to ownership because it wasn't fast enough for him. And I 100% agree. I think it needs to be more streamlined for sure, because why would you have a fucking middleman if there doesn't need to be a middleman?
If they're going to promote within, I think it'll be Lawrence Gilman.
That's an interesting name too.
Just bring him back to Vancouver, please. Bring Gilly back.
Which one? Both. No.
Why am I now hearing that Justin Timberlake song in my head? Bring sexy back. What?
Tim Hunter would be interesting as
well. Come on, Clay Emu. We need that.
So, Devin, it's funny you mentioned Hunter. I don't think Hunter's a GM type, but I think that if Mitch Lowe gets promoted to the Flames, Hunter may take the HL job.
Hey, that'd be sweet. And I think Love would be a great head coach. It just sounds like he is a player's coach. And I mean, I know that's it seems very faux pas to talk about a player's coach and in the Calgary Flames organization, but this is a different core, and the way that Conroy wants to, bring and give the opportunity to the kids. Why not give the kids a familiar face?
I love it. I don't have to transition myself as host. It just naturally goes.
There you go. Before we leave Toronto, I'll throw another dark horse name out there. I could see them bringing in Ray Whitney, who's currently NHL Director of Player Safety.
Actually,
he's charismatic. He's magnetic. I think those are some of the things that they're going to need from that GM. I think he's a good team player, and I think Toronto's going to be very much a team job there in terms of working with Shanny and that sort of thing. I think Whitney could be a surprise.
I mean, interesting.
Maybe. Based off of everything I heard from Shanahan, I'm expecting someone who has experience in a front office, at the very least, if not an experience as a GM.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I'll throw one more just for shits and giggles. Well, maybe I don't think this works, but this was my idea. Does Ken Holland try to pry Ken Holland for 1 year?
Oh,
okay.
Already said he honor his deal. I don't think you can
good reaction, Dev.
I don't think you can say you're going to honor the last year of your deal and then be like, just kidding. See you guys later.
Yeah, that's true.
He's not their guy.
And if you really want Holland, I mean, if you're going to blow this thing up, a lot of guys could blow this thing up. Have somebody come in, do a year, blow the thing up, and then if you want Holland, bring him in after that. The interesting name is hearing St. Louis's GM being talked about moving over there, but I don't think that's going to happen either. I don't think you.
Oh, that was full on bullshit there.
I don't
That
think you're
was
going to get
full on
anybody who's
some-
already a GM to move out of their job. You're not going to get an owner saying, yes, this guy can be released to go work for you.
That was Fernando Alonso dating Taylor Swift bullshit.
What? They're not?
No,
Oh,
they're
man,
not.
I'm dating Taylor Swift.
Oh, I knew it.
There's as much chance of me dating Taylor Swift as it is for Fernando. Okay.
I mean,
Slim it up.
his name is Fernando. Come on.
The only difference between the two of you is
Fernando
outside of
turns
this podcast, nobody knows your name.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's going to be fascinating. Just quickly to Dubas before we get into Conroy. If you're Dubas, what's the better situation for you, Ottawa or Pittsburgh?
Ottawa.
I agree, Devin.
If I'm Dubas, I wait a year and yeah, take the Ottawa job after next season. Do the Barry Trotz, take a season off, spend the time, repair the family. It sounds like that this last season really took a toll on them. And then go to Ottawa and completely ignite the Battle of Ontario.
Yeah.
You're going to a Pittsburgh Penguins team that is on the precipice of a rebuild with, your older players, or you're going to an Ottawa Senators team on the up and up with Brady Tkachuk at the fucking helm. Good God, yes, you want the longevity.
And probably a motivated Brady Tkachuk too.
Brady,
Oh,
you got Tim Stutzla, who looks like he's ready to take the next step. You've got Shabbat and Sanderson anchoring your blue line. Still some question marks in net, but there's some promise there.
And Sogard.
If I were Dubas, I'd probably take a year off and see not only Ottawa, but what other jobs might be available then. I think you might have a Philadelphia job open. I think there might be a few other jobs that are going to be open then and really have more of a wide range of picks. And, I mean, we always see a GM, canned mid-season. Maybe you're that guy that wants to be the mid-season replacement.
Yep.
Could be.
I'm not sure Pittsburgh's the right
I don't think
landing
so.
spot for
Did
Dubas.
you-
I also think that Cheveldayoff's on a really short leash right now in Winnipeg, so that might be a landing place for Dubas.
Yeah, that's a secretly interesting off-season location.
Just before we move on, in terms of intrigue for Canadian teams, has there been a more intriguing offseason in the recent memory?
Recent memory, no.
Because you got, I think the most intriguing, to me, in my opinion, the most intriguing player in this trade market is Connor Hellebuck. Because
I don't see him being traded on the market, though.
I don't think he wants to come back to Winnipeg. I don't think he's going to sign long term.
We talked about Matthews earlier. You want to make a splash? Toronto needs goaltending.
Can you?
I don't expect that Murray is going to be back next year. I think he's going on LTIR.
Yes, Murray's going to go on LTIR.
I don't think Jacob Wohl and then the Zamboni guy is your pairing you want to go into the season with.
I think they have something with Wall.
They have some with Wall too.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he's there, but I'm not sure that he's my starter yet. I think he's still probably my 1B or my backup.
Is Dan Vladar an option in Toronto?
It definitely could be. I think you see what you can get with Samsonov here.
Yeah, that's what I think they're going to go with next year. I think they're going to go Samsonov Wall. I think that's a better option than giving up assets for a Vladar, even if it is just a third.
If Samsonov wasn't
no, if
there,
Tree ends up there, I could see Kevin. I could see Vladar ending up there if Tree's the GM, because that's a guy that Tree's very high on.
But then you kind of, I could definitely see you put Wall back in the A and let Samsonov and Vladar battle it out. That could be a complete option because Conroy said it. He has three guys there, and he wants to give runway to Wolf, Who's the odd man out? Okay, well, it could be Markstrom.
Yeah, but if Vladar gets traded, I don't see it happening until closer to camp. I think they're going to give Wolf a shot, but they're not going to give Wolf the job. Wolf's going to have to earn it, and if he doesn't, they're going to hang on to Vladar. But I think they're going to tell Dan, you know what, this kid's chomping at the bit. If he takes the job, we're going to have to flip you.
And there, okay, just let's go back to Sean's question. Here, the intriguing teams to me, Winnipeg is intriguing because, I mean, that locker room is about to blow. Toronto with all of their questions. You've got Ottawa with the sale makes things interesting and the way that
they thought they were going to be better this year than they were.
And they made and Alex DeBrincat is one of those long-term questions as well.
Well, it sounds like
when was the last time we cared so much about who owned an NHL team?
I know.
Arizona.
Yeah.
We don't care who owns them, just where they are.
Jim Balsillie?
I can't wait. Oh, before we move on from this, there's the new the new movie about Balsillie and the Blackberry and Gary Bettman. There's a Gary Bettman character in it. I want to see just for that.
The best Balsillie interviews when he wanted to buy the team and move him to Hamilton. He was on Toronto Talk Radio, and some guy called in. You could just see this guy's face getting red, saying, "I live in Hamilton. I buy Buffalo tickets. If you do this, you're going to kill Buffalo." I said, "Great, then sell me the Buffalo team. Like, I don't care which one you sell me. Just sell me a team."
By the way, I also heard they're doing another movie. They are remaking Slapshot.
Oh my god!
I don't think you can.
I don't know.
Leave well enough alone.
Okay, so
that's not a movie you can remake in today's day and age.
Back to the Canadian intriguing teams. I think I don't know if Montreal is super intriguing. I think that they're going to kind of stay their course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Edmonton is semi-intriguing because I think that I think they feel they're on the precipice of something. So they may make a large move. They've got that one more year with Ken Holland. Vancouver is interesting. Well, we're interested in Vancouver, but there's we haven't really dug into that, but I think that there's an argument to do nothing or less or not a lot.
They still need to do. They need to do something. They need to shuffle the deck chairs a little bit here to make things work. They need to make that blue line better. The question I have for the Canucks is whether or not you, I think they are going to move out a couple players to free up cap space. It's whether or not you use that cap space to bring in players or you bring up younger players that are already in the system, whether it's on the blue line or depth forward players.
And I think with where they are in their cycle, that's the way I would probably go, is bringing up those young players.
You've got Chip Wu, who's someone who's they've talked about as someone who can push for a roster spot this year. You've got Neil Zaman, who's they're looking for a third line center. I want to see them giving him a shot. Like, I really liked him as a fourth line center for the Canucks this year. Give him a shot. I don't think you need to force yourself into overpaying for a third line center there when you have him there. But the big thing with the Canucks is, how are they freeing up cap space here? You've got Tyler Myers with 1 year left. You've got that group of wingers, Besser, Garland, Bolivier, that all need one. At least one needs to move out of that. So that, and then you've got the nuclear bomb that could come out of Vancouver, which would be the Oliver Ekman-Larsson buyout, which I think I don't think is going to happen, but I still think there's still a chance. There's the Lloyd Christmas, so you're telling me there's a chance option there. So it's going to be that's where the intrigue with Vancouver comes. Not to mention that their third string goaltender this year has just led Latvia to the semifinals in the World Championships, upsetting Sweden in the quarterfinals. It's an arty party in Latvia. Arthur Silovs is rocketing
Can we
up
say
the
that they've
prospect.
peaked?
What?
Latvia?
Latvia? Oh, yeah. They're playing Canada next.
Well, the only reason why they didn't that they won is because Willie Nylander decided not to join the team because Alex Nylander would be the odd man out if Willie came. Just saying.
This is
Silovs made
Latvia's
40
Bret Hart
saves
season.
in that quarterfinal.
The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be for Latvia this year.
They're honestly, they are slowly creeping into the that top echelon that they're gonna like. It's like, and those fans, the Latvian fans, are fucking fantastic.
They're fun. It's fun for sure.
Yeah.
But I guess the other team is Calgary, and they did make their GM decision. I don't think this became too much of a surprise. He was the odds-on favorite from the very beginning, but they went rightly through the search, and there were names like Brandon Pridham came up, Stan Bowman's name came up, Mark Bergevin name came up, number of names came up, but it ended up being Craig Conroy is the new GM of the Calgary Flames. And Sean titled this the Conroy Koolaid, which I think a lot of people after that press conference were starting to drink because after a year of just everything just feeling so dour and down, you needed a fresh, kind of happy moment, and Craig Conroy provided that in a number of different ways, saying that this is the place he wants to win the Stanley Cup. He loves it in Calgary. Just his open candor. He stared in Lanny McDonald's face when he says, "I want to win a Stanley Cup." He kind of made some comments about previous things that were going on. He talked about young kids. Are we drinking the Kool-Aid?
I think so. Let's back up a little bit. You talked about a lot of the guys that were interviewed. It was said the Flames interviewed over 35 candidates, and I think for a lot of this is
By the
really.
way, Dan, were you one of them?
I was number 36.
Okay, fair enough. Congratulations.
Thank you. They found their guy before they had to call me, but I think in the NHL, it's a very small circle, and you don't want that guy who maybe gets a GM job somewhere else, then holds it against you and says, well, they didn't interview me. I'm not going to do business with them. So I think a lot of this is really an optics thing of let's talk to a lot of people so that, we have that warm fuzzy. As far as is Conroy the right guy? I think he is. And I think especially where the Flames are now with 7 big contracts expiring, that sort of thing, Connie knows the history. Connie knows where these guys are at. The players like Connie. I think they need to make a bit of a culture change here and bringing in more player-friendly personnel and guys that players like. Even if they're hard on the players, they need to be guys they're liking and respecting. And I think Conroy is just that. And I think this was a place for the Flames where if you didn't promote Conroy, you were going to lose Conroy. So I think
he would have joined Tree in
he might have, or I could see him even interviewing for either now or later the next GM job that's available, like a Pittsburgh, or the next job that comes up mid-season. So I think if you didn't promote him, you're going to lose him. And I think that I like Conroy, but I had said if they're going to bring in Conroy, they need to bring in somebody veteran to work with them. And I love that Conroy is brought in with Dave Nonis, and I think that's kind of exactly what you need there.
By the way, guys, I was number 35. So
congratulations.
Yeah.
I was
Devin and I both pulled our numbers like we're at the deli and we're just waiting with them.
Yeah.
Now interviewing 36, and Devin, you're next.
Yeah. I was a hair before Dan.
We're standing at the Pocket Dog stand on the concourse, just waiting for our turn.
I was just pumping that ranch in there. Come on.
That's right.
Yeah. I love it. I think that they did the due diligence that they needed to do in order for them to move forward. If they just hired Craig Conroy, there'd be a lot of questions within the organization again of did they do the due diligence to see if Craig is the best fit. And from the outside perspective, the majority vote obviously I think is Craig Conroy. I think he's very fresh and has new ideas. It's been documented that he did not approve of all of Brad Treliving's moves throughout his tenure as the GM of the Flames. And to Dan's point, he's very well liked within the organization. He knows the players love him. He's been a player. He's been through all different sides and seen it all. He's been on waivers. He's played the fourth line. He's played the first line. He's been traded. He understands that side of the game. And I think for contract negotiations, I think that's huge. Being able to relate to the players and having, like Dan said, having Dave Nonis on board as well with that experience. Fuck yeah. You got to chalk that both of these signings for the GM and what is it? Assistant GM and special operator.
Senior Vice President of Hockey Ops.
I like special operator better.
Okay, well, I'll call Don. Actually, Dan, can you call Don?
Let me do that right now, and I'll tell him that Devin's going to follow him around and hum the Mission Impossible theme everywhere he goes. Hold on. I also think this is on trend right now. If we look at a lot of the trend of GMs, it's hiring former players, right? Verbeek, Kevin Adams, Yzerman, Daniel Briere, Mike Greer. Like, I think there's this trend recently of bringing in guys that have been significant to your organization as that GM and as that public face. And I think that this is very much on trend with where the NHL is going.
Yeah, as long as you have the right people behind them or surrounding them, that can create that have the business acumen, the contract,
and that's why I love Nonis, because Nonis has done all that in Canadian markets. He can be the heavy, and I'll give you guys my prediction right now. I don't think Don Maloney wants to be president of Hockey Ops. I think he was put in there because he's the best guy that they have. I predict this time next year, Nonis becomes president of Hockey Ops. And I think that's part of the reason he's senior VP and the other guys are just VP. I think they're grooming him to take over for Don Maloney.
There's got to be a carrot at the end of the stick for Nonis, and that definitely is it.
Yeah, and I think you get him working with Connie, you get the familiarity there, and then it'll be interesting because Connie will be his boss per se. Then he'll become Connie's boss, but I think you want that kind of team relationship. But that's my guess by this time next year is Dave Nonis takes over from Maloney, and Maloney's either back doing whatever he did before or has retired.
I like Maloney in this position, though.
I agree, but I don't know that Maloney has that experience you need, and I think Maloney is very much like Connie, and he's seen as the nice guy. He's maybe, I think you kind of need in some ways, the shrewd negotiator and the good face guy, and I think Maloney can still be around. I mean, he was a very trusted advisor to Brad, so maybe he becomes an AGM, maybe he becomes part of scouting or player dev. I don't think we get rid of him, Kevin, but I just don't know that he's the guy you need with John Bean there navigating the Hockey Ops side.
Well, I guess it's going to depend on, just in the terms of the building side, it is going to depend on who wins this election. That's next Tuesday.
Yeah, but I think even outside the election, CESC is getting very big, right? They've now got how many properties? I think you need somebody who can really advocate as that former GM, which I think we can all agree Nonis has more experience than Maloney does, to just be that guy we need this budget, we need to buy this guy out, we need to do this, and saying we did this in Toronto or we did this in Vancouver, I think has a lot more pull than I did this once in Phoenix.
And the thing with Maloney is that you can see that this is not his thing.
Yeah,
this is not his shtick whatsoever. So, I agree with Dan. I think that it was just one of those things where he's the best man for the job right now. But
best guy internally.
I think Dan, you hit the nail on the head, and that you do see Nonis president of Hockey Ops at this time next year.
Yeah,
as we raise the cup, of course.
Well, I mean, and there was a lot of questions. I think a lot of people kind of
cheers to that, Devin.
Cheers. There were a lot of questions about Nonis, and I'm glad that Mike Gould stepped in and just said one thing about Dave Nonis is he drafted William Nylander. That was one thing he did. He also was able to. He also that year drafted Pierre Engvall in the 7th round. Pierre Engvall is not a superstar. Devin will attest to that. Pierre Engvall is a very valuable player. But that my point is, he's was really good at getting some late round picks, and that's been one of the Flames' strengths with the Tree Living era, is they have been able to find players outside that first round that were able to play.
And and Connie's been a big part of that. And that's another reason I really like this move is Connie. I mean, he has full faith in the scouting staff. He's been part of the scouting staff, depending on who you talk to. Some of the guys I talked to said Connie's been right there with the scouts. So I think that a lot of those maybe failings of Dave Nonis, if you will, it doesn't matter because Connie's going to keep his hands in some of that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he did say that he's going to be wanting to go to those tournaments like the World Juniors. He wants to be there for those big tournaments. And I wouldn't think that I would guess that under 18s would be a part of that as well. And he won't be traveling as much with the team as Brad did, right? And that kind of goes hand in hand with development. And one of the biggest knocks of this organization is not having your quote unquote cupboard stacked, right? Like, I mean, like if you look down at, hopefully Matthew Phillips comes back. I really hope he does. I think he will with Connie at the helm. And I mean, you have Jeremy Poirier on the back end. Who else is there?
Yeah.
Right.
No, I mean, I think there's some other guys that, and I think when we talk about prospects, talk about top six, I think there's a lot of guys in this Flames organization. I mean, Walker Dewar came out of nowhere and will probably make the NHL. Like, I think, we got Emilio Pettersson. We have guys in this organization that can fill out a roster, and we can't always just look at it as top 4, top 3 or bust, right? I mean, somebody has to play on the third and fourth line. I think the Flames have a lot of those kind of guys in the system who come from those late rounds, but not everybody can be a Goudreau. Kev, what you were saying about going to the Worlds, if I was going to send some of the Worlds, it wouldn't be Nonis, it'd be Pascal. And I think as the guy who's doing a great job with the AHL, he's probably the first eyes from that management team I want on my young players.
I think it was great that they kept Pascal. I think he would have, if I think he is going to. Pascal will be a GM in the NHL.
I think Pascal's like Connie. He's here until a better offer is going to come, and I think they will lose Pascal soon. So I think bringing Nonis in as some experience is going to help with that as well when you do lose Brad.
Yeah. The guy I'm most happy, and I agree with you, I think Pascal's the guy that you bring, but I also just from a pure human thing, it was great to hear Chris Snow's name in this list. Like, he's been through so much, and I'm glad they gave him a title. And
VP of Data and Analytics.
Yeah, I was really just kind of happy to hear that too.
I think Chris Snow, though, at this point is a Flame as long as he wants to be. I mean, whether he's VP Data Analytics, special assistant to the GM, like, this is not a guy that everyone loves him. He's going through it, what he's going through. I think the Flames will make sure that family's taken care of as long as they need to be.
Yeah.
And even if Snowy's health, I mean, even last year, he was in the hospital for a long time. He probably wasn't working full time, if you will. He will be part of this management team as long as he wants to be.
Yeah. So I think, the team is good. And Nonis did make the Roberto Luongo trade as well. A lot of people looked at that his Toronto tenure, and there was a lot of bad trades, but
show me a GM that hasn't made bad trades.
Yeah, and I don't, but exactly. And I don't think that Toronto was in the best position when Nonis was there. So
I also think that you're comparing apples and kumquats in a way, because both that Toronto team and that Vancouver team are in a very different position than where this Calgary team is. And the trades you make are often dependent on where your team is and, in that sort of rebuild cycle.
Yeah. Sean, what were you going to say?
I don't want to make this political, but I don't think that it's necessarily who wins the election, whether or not the arena deal goes through. I think that there's
I think the snowball's already too far down the hill.
Yes, I think it's going to happen no matter what. They know that. I think if the NDP win, it's going to be, and they take that away from Calgary, it's going to be an absolute gong show. And they know that it's going to happen. With Dave Nonis, I think it's going to. He's had some good moves, has some bad moves, but he's also not there to be the guy making those decisions. He's there to advise Conroy. He's there to partake, help Conroy through situations that Conroy hasn't necessarily been through as the decision maker. So taking what he's done in terms of drafting or trades and all that, I think that's just some hyper analysis that doesn't necessarily need to be done.
And I think it's easy to go
he's
back and
great
look at a guy
hire
like
for the
that,
Flames.
Sean, 10 years later and say this was a bad deal when we look at how a guy's career played out.
Exactly, right? And I think it's a good deal. I think it makes sense that to bring in someone with that experience, who's been there, been that guy in that chair, been that person in that chair, that can help guide Conroy through that. Yes, Conroy's been there and he's been sort of the side guy there, but until you actually are your feet are in the fire, it's different.
Yeah.
Kevin, you're a Leafs guy. Here's a trivia question for you. Dave Nonis and the Calgary Flames made one trade in the past when he was Leafs GM. Do you know what that trade was?
Enough.
Nope. I don't think he was there for that, was he?
No,
he wasn't. No, he wasn't. No.
Calgary Flames acquired Joe Colborne on September 29th, 2013 for a 2014 fourth-round pick.
You know what's funny about that, Dan, is that I played against and with Joe Colborne for years.
There you go.
and his cousin.
And these are the kind of party tricks that they didn't interview me for as the GM.
Yeah, you should have had it. You should be there.
And that's the reason why I'm not.
That's right. You played against Colborne, that's why.
Yeah, exactly. I played against a lot of NHLers there, Dan. I don't know if you know that. I'm just saying.
Anyway, let's start
and NHL draft picks.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess there's a lot of player questions in here, which we'll unpack. But the next priority here is the head coach. Is based on what Craig Conroy has said, is this head coach in the organization or is it outside?
I think it's 50-50. I think you have Mitch Love. I think you have names and me do not go well.
Ryan Huska?
Huska, thank you. I think both of those are very good candidates for this organization. As far as optics go, I think that he does go outside the organization to see who would be a good fit, and it might be a very similar search as the Flames did for the GM. And I think he'll probably would cast a wide net to see who is available and who would be fitting the new regime kind of ideology and the way that Craig Conroy wants to go forward. And I think it's a player's coach.
I think if it's internal, it's going to be Mitch Love. I don't think it's Huska. I don't think it's Mueller. I don't think it's going to be any of those, like Cam McLean or any of the assistant coaches there, or associate coaches, as that's what Kurt Muller's title was. I don't think any of those three are back. I think it's Mitch Love will be either the coach of the Wranglers or the coach of the Flames, and then they move on from there.
You don't think Huska's going to be back?
No.
I disagree, but Dan?
So if Pascal became the GM, I think that Mitch Love would have been named coach already, because Pascal's the guy who runs the Wranglers. I think he has that relationship with Mitch Love. I don't know, though, that going with a rookie GM and a rookie coach is the right way to go. I think you want a little bit more of a veteran there. I've been a fan of Gerard Gallant. I think Gallant should get a serious look. I don't know if the Flames are going to want to pay what it takes to bring him in when they're paying as much they are for Darryl to go away. That's my only worry there. I've heard Alex Tanguay. I don't know we want that optics of, let's just bring the 04 boys back together and
not yet.
That sort of thing. I'm 50-50 on Mitch Love. I think the Flames are at a point with Mitch Love, like I think they were with Conroy, where if they don't promote him, they might lose him. And I think if not Calgary, I think you got one more year with the Wranglers before another NHL team might come calling, or a mid-season team might come calling, or something like that. I think that you'll have Huska here for one more year before he would move on. just because I think that when we look at the little coaching vacancies that are there, I think there's a lot of people above Huska in a lot of minds. But when I look at this list, I think Gerard Gallant is my number one. I think they have to talk to Peter Laviolette, even though I don't think he'll come in, but I think you got to talk to the experience. And I would not be surprised if they end up with Andrew Burnett.
Okay. I am, Dan, you and I don't usually disagree 1,000%, but I would avoid I would personally avoid Gerard Gallant like the plague. It feels like Daryl Sutter. That Rangers team did not enjoy playing with Gerard Gallant. And you could really start to see that when they played. And that the way they played against New Jersey, I would 10,000% not go with Gerard Gallant.
I think the players don't look at Gerard Gallant as maybe out of touch as Daryl was. I think players have a little more respect right now for Gallant, and I think Gallant plays a very much more offensive system, which would be okay for the Flames.
If it was Brad Treliving's tenure still here in Calgary, then Gerard Gallant would be number one for sure.
I think you're right, Devin. My pick is that the Flames either go with Burnett or another interesting one would be Mark Savard out of the OHL. But I think going with either Burnett or someone like that who's had a cup of coffee in the NHL but isn't established. But I don't know I want Mitch Love and have a veteran GM and a veteran coach right now. Or sorry, a rookie GM, rookie coach. I think one of those needs to be a veteran.
Let's play the three. Okay, so where I do see Sean's point with Huska is I think one of the things you may have to have a serious look at is not bringing anyone back from that coaching staff that has any remnants. Because I think as much as we talked about this was about Daryl Sutter, I think the coaching staff might have to take a brunt of that responsibility as well.
And I think if you bring in a veteran coach, you have to let him bring in his own people. If you bring in a guy who doesn't have his own people, I think you can say, hey, we're going to give you these people for a year and then we'll reassess.
I think whoever you bring in is going to bring in their own people.
Yeah. They probably will, but I think that's a disservice to Huska. I don't think Huska should be under that umbrella of the Sutter regime.
Now, could you guys see them?
Maybe, but I still think that's what's going to happen.
Could you guys see them doing something with coaching like they've done with the GM and bring in a veteran or a rookie head coach and get rid of Muller and bring in a more veteran associate?
Well, here's some of my theories. If you I'll start with a couple of Mitch Love theories. He's either back with the Wranglers. You could put him in as an assistant. That would be my preference. Or you bring him in as an assistant, and you bring a guy like this is, some may laugh when I'm about to say this, but hear me out. You bring in a guy like Bruce Boudreau in as an assistant because I think Bruce Boudreau. I think he would work it as an assistant.
I could see that
because. I think just the way that Connor talked about, he wanted a more offensive game. Boudreau fits that, but I don't know if I want Bruce Boudreau to be the head coach of the
I don't
team.
want him to be the guy, but I could see him being that advisor to the guy, almost your associate coach.
So I could see that's one area I could see that.
I don't know that Boudreau would want that though.
He might.
I think for Boudreau, that might be his last kick at the can.
Not this early on. I think he'd still be fine. Working the whatever team he has down in Hershey. I think he'd be fine just doing that.
Kev, we're getting some feedback from you, man.
Yeah.
Well, Kev's figuring that out. I'll throw another name out there if you want to go with someone who has no NHL experience. Jay Leach, Seattle Kraken assistant coach. He's well thought of. I think he's a guy who's been with a successful organization now. The Kraken have come out strong. They were a playoff team this year, and I think that's a guy who a lot of people think is going to be a head coach soon if you want to go that way and it's not Love.
Yeah, and then there's also the drawing a blank on his name, the Leafs assistant coach.
Yeah, Marcus Strong is up in the AHL, and he looks like he's ready for promotion.
I'm thinking of who am I thinking of here?
So another conversation.
Spencer Carberry. He's
Oh,
the one
yeah.
that's getting a lot of talk there.
Yeah, Spencer Carberry. And we're seeing a lot more women now at the AHL level and that sort of thing. Did the Calgary Flames make a bold move? And I mean, we're seeing them bring in women on the coaching staff and skating and that sort of thing. Could we see the Flames bring in a woman? I don't think they're head coach, but as an assistant coach at the NHL level.
I think assistant coach makes sense. I don't think it makes sense right now. If you're going to make that bold of a move, I want to see them.
Sure. Like Jessica
bring them
Campbell's
along
an assistant
slowly
with
enough.
AHL Coachella. I can see her coming up. You'd hate to see it, but if they're going to put a woman in as a head coach, it'd be Cassie, just because of Brad. But that'd be the wrong move.
Yeah, for sure. It's not time yet. I think if you're going to do it, it's more for optics. It's not for the.
And the Flames aren't at a point where they need to do stuff just for optics.
No, exactly, and definitely not the Chicago Blackhawks. That's for sure.
What about
we're going to rebuild? We have Kevin again.
What about Todd Reardon?
Okay, here's a couple of other. Let me throw a couple of other scenarios out. You bring in Andrew Brunette. You bring as your head coach. You put in Mitch Love as your assistant coach, and you bring in. I like the idea of bringing in Alex Tanguay because of his. He has one of the couple things he's done really well is power play and his offensive creativity. The Flames do lack offensive creativity in this organization. I would be open to the idea of Alex Tanguay coaching the Wranglers.
Yeah,
as an option.
I think that's a good transition. Mitch Love, I think, is he's well known for his upbeat player first mentality, playing music during the practices, high-fiving, celebrating, and I think that would be a good transition for him. If he isn't going to be a head coach, I think that's a good promotion for him. And
see, I'm not. If you want, go, Jeff. Sorry.
If you're going to bring in a new coach, I think Andrew Brunette is at the top of the list, just so that Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar are going to be more comfortable as the new guys within this organization that you have locked up long term, and you do have a Mitch Love that is he screams assistant coach as far as the traditional assistant coach goes. But if you do that, then you have Andrew Brunette potentially being okay. When am I going to get fired, so that Mitch Love can be the head coach kind of thing.
And that's where I'm at. I think if you think that Mitch Love is actually the coach of the future, I don't think you bring him up as the assistant coach. I think you keep him as your coach in with the Wranglers in the AHL. And you bring him up as the head coach when he's ready. And if you think that's now, you do it now.
There's also a lot of coaches that are just good dev coaches, and you want to keep them in the development system. And we've seen guys that have been at the AHL, got promoted to the NHL, didn't work, went back to the AHL. I honestly think for some of the reasons Devin was mentioning, I think that Mitch Love is a great development coach, but I'm not sure I'd want to make him my NHL head coach. I think that music, the high-fiving, I think a lot of those things work great with the young guys. I'm not sure you're going to have your 32-year-old forwards wanting high fives during warm up.
Can I ask just a quick question that's a bit of a tangent here, but I just want to ask it. Were we disappointed with the Calgary? What did we make of the Calgary Wranglers playoff run? They got to 5 games in the Coachella Valley. They lose in overtime. They're not in the Final Four. Are we disappointed considering the standings, or are we like
none of the division winners made it to the Final Four?
And Coachella's a team they've struggled with all season, so I was expecting quite a battle, and I said this is going to be a coin toss. Their season series was. I think, they didn't make it to the finals, but I think you got a whole bunch of guys, got a whole bunch of development and learning from that, and that's all you can ask for at the HL level.
So
pack them up and move them to Houston. Fucking done. Done with the Wranglers being in Calgary.
I think Houston has an HL team, don't they?
My point is the stock didn't really change for Mitch Love with that playoff run.
No, I don't think that was a coaching issue.
Okay.
No.
That was a goaltender issue.
And
Wolf is terrible.
I have talked to a few guys at the HL level, Kevin, who's even said in some ways you'd rather your team doesn't win it because you need to teach these young guys how to face adversity and losing a big game in a big series and how do they bounce back? How do they take that in exit meetings? A lot of people said if you're a team like Calgary who thinks they can go for it, that kind of playoff adversity is sometimes better for development.
Personally, I don't think making Mitch Love an assistant coach is the right move. I think you keep it with the Wranglers. You keep him there until you think he's ready to take that jump. I've yet to see an assistant coach, someone who comes up and is the assistant or associate coach, and then jumps into the head coach position with that same team that has had success.
Andrew Gulletson, never mind.
That's different.
And Sean, I think I agree with you in a lot of ways, and I think if you're going to do that as the Flames, you have to be willing to lose Love, because I think at some point somebody may call him and say, we want to try this. Yeah. And I think that's where you almost need to have the Mitch Love in waiting in the AHL, the guy you're just going to promote up there. So I think I agree with you. I think Mitch Love should stay with the Wranglers, but I think then you've got to be willing to lose him.
And look at Columbus, who is a younger team looking for a new head coach.
Exactly.
They did interview Andrew Burnett today, though, apparently.
It's a good pick for him.
Are there any other coaches right now who are still coaching but have their deal up at the end of the year?
Well, I mean, there's Sheldon Keefe that, of course, we're obviously going to be questioning forever until we know what goes on in Toronto. That's the only other one.
I wouldn't mind him, to be honest. And that's no bias towards the Leafs and what he's done. He's done fuck all with the Leafs. Let's be honest. But as far as getting past the point of where you want to be in an organization, but you got to take a look at him, and I think that's what they're waiting for is see what's going to happen with Sheldon Keefe.
For everyone who wants Mitch Love, I think they're looking at the Jared Bednar model, right? The AHL coach who came up and became very successful. And I have to remind people that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, Bednar, and you have John Cooper as well, who did that. Travis Green.
I'm not sold on that.
I could see Travis Green as your associate coach or one of the team, but I'm not sure I'd want him as the head coach. I
could see him being the sort of the transition coach to a Mitch Love, because he's sort of that in between coach. He's not a hard ass, like old school hard ass like drill sergeant coach. He also he's not a full blown players coach like Mitch Love is, like we see with Marty St. Louis, we see with some of the other younger coaches in the league. I could see him being that transition coach if your idea is that you want Mitch Love in that seat, say 2-3 years from now.
So transition coach is that you're going to be hired to get fired within 2 years.
Yep. Most 90% of coaches, that's what it is.
But you might as well go with a Bruce Boudreau,
or just bring in one of the Sutter brothers.
Well, and that's one of the things is like, I don't think that would be a mandate for Craig Conroy. The mandate is to win now.
If you're doing a transition coach, I'd rather go with Gallant.
I don't think the thing with Gallant is I think Green's going to command less money than Gallant, and we've talked about how this ownership hasn't been willing to pay coaches in the past. And now that they've got Sutter sitting on the sidelines making millions of dollars, being Dr. Evil, I think they aren't going to be looking at the top end of that coaching pool, which Gallant's going to be at. I think they're looking at the middle, which is I think where Green is at. And I think Boudreau, I just don't see him wanting to do it again. So let me ask you guys this.
We've heard Conroy say that he thinks this team is still competitive, and it sounds like Connie's in a win now mode. How important do you think it is to have a coach who has winning experience at the NHL level if that's where you are. Do you need to bring in that guy who's either been a head coach or an assistant coach with a winning organization, or can you bring in a Mitch Love or, an assistant coach from somewhere else to essentially lead guys somewhere he's never been?
Depends on what their philosophy is. Because you got to transition from the hard ass bullshit that Daryl Sutter brought to the team last year.
And I also think that Conroy also talked a lot about needing to get younger and needing to get more enthusiastic. And I think you need that, and that the coach needs to say that. I just threw Travis Green in there because I wanted to just see where you guys were at. I don't know if I see that as a great fit, but I'm expecting some roster moves here from the Flames. I'm expecting them to move out money and veteran players to open up spots for Coronado, open up spots for Peltier, to maybe make a move for a younger defenseman. I know you've got Poirier down in the AHL, but that's 1 year. He's 20 years old. I think he needs another year to develop and learn the defensive game at the professional level more.
Outside of Backlund and Lindholm, who are you moving out?
You got Toffoli. I think you could get some decent assets for.
Maybe the question, Devin, is which one of those 7 stays first?
Fair.
I think they could. I think you could make a move for Matt. You could get a decent return for Mangiapane. You've got Dubé, who's got 1 year left. I think it's outside of Kadri, outside of the players who have no movement clauses. I think everyone is available for the right price.
Mangiapane isn't that then?
I think the Mangiapane is a guy that Tree really liked, and I think is paying for potential, which hasn't materialized. I still think that Mangiapane is punching a little over his weight right now. I'd be fine to explore what we could get for him.
Everybody's up for
last year. Actually,
what's
to
that?
be honest with you,
I think last year, though, after Johnny moved, they were expecting Mangiapane would take that step and fill in one of those kind of top 4 wing spots, which I don't think that he did. And I think that, you can't – he's going to want a contract extension and more money, and I think you're already paying him probably more than he's worth.
As of right now, I think he'll have a bounce back next year. I
he
think
went from 17 and 18 goals to 35 and then back to 17. Now that 18 was in 56 games, but I think
last year he punched above his weight, or the year that he got 38 or whatever, he punched above his weight class. I think this guy's a 20-25 goal guy a year. I feel the same with Dubé. Dubé's a great filler piece, but I think at more than $2 million, that's a rough spot you can open up.
I think outside of Huberdeau and Kadri, I think everyone's available.
And outside of Uyghur too.
So my guess is that Toffoli re-signs. I don't think Backlund re-signs. I think if Backlund re-signed, they would put the C on him because Conroy said they will have a captain, but I think Backlund's going to be out. I think Lindholm might be out. But I think of those kind of top guys, I think Toffoli's the one I could see re-signing here.
I could see that as well. Anybody's up for debate, even Kadri. I think Huberdeau is probably the one.
No one's touching that contract.
No one wants the Kadri. Not until the caps changes in 2 years. But I think right now, especially if you're losing Lindholm, you need somebody down the middle, and I think Kadri is going to be a stabilizing presence there.
Yeah, for sure.
If somebody wants it, great, you can have it, but I don't think anybody wants it.
But if you're okay, but I'm sorry, if you don't have Elias Lindholm here in this organization, you're not a playoff team. You're not in this specific division. You're not. You're simply not. You. This is a division with Jack Eichel, Connor McDavid, Elias Pettersson, Anze Kopitar, Thomas Hertl. Everybody has a number 1 center. If you're without Lindholm, you're not.
And you're even more screwed if you get rid of Backlund, because now you're down to Kadri and Lewis if Lewis comes back. Like, I think They can
And
afford to
Conroy's
lose
had
one
it.
of those two centers and find a way to backfill. You can't lose two of them.
Yeah.
The thing with
but at the same time, if we
Backlund,
trade, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, the thing with Backlund and Lindholm is if you go back to what Conroy said, he wants players who want to be here. And if they want to be here, he will find a way to to have them stay. But if they don't, he's going to move them out.
Yeah,
And I think I think we will see Backlund re-sign for a couple years. Lindholm, I'm not sure. And and with Lindholm, it's not necessarily an issue with the organization, everything that's gone through. I think it's a lot more complicated, and I think he will get moved if he doesn't want to stay.
I'm flip flopping on you. I think that Backlund will go and Lindholm will stay. The way that Connie was talking about Lindholm in this presser, yeah, he wanted to go, but I think now with Conroy at the helm, I think that there's a good possibility that you'll have him to stay. And it's having the Bo Horvat deal 8 by 8.5 is probably what the standard is going to be. Yeah, I think it's worth it within this organization. I think you'll have Lindholm will be your Bergeron, and he will age like fine wine.
Devin, I think that Lindholm probably thinks he wants to go now. I don't know how he will feel if a new coach comes in. I think if Connie calls him today, he's going to say, I don't know. So I think, what Connie might think now from exit meeting discussions and what they might think come camp or, the hiring of a coach could be very different as well.
Can I just ask a question here?
No.
Well, I'm going to end there. What is a reasonable get for Lindholm? Like, what would you...
Well, and that's where I was going to go too. Even though you say you're going to be without these guys, it's not like they're going to just trade for futures.
Well,
depends.
Right, because there was in Julian McKenzie's mailbag, someone in Columbus threw out the idea of Lindholm for that number 3, Lindholm and something for a number 3 pick, which would either be an Adam Fantilli or a Leo Carlson. The pro of that is the Flames do not have that elite star potential in the lineup. Like Pelche's good. He's not a superstar. Zeri will be good, not a superstar. That's enticing. I mean, I think
I just don't see Columbus wanting to do that.
No.
Well, you have Gaudreau though.
I'll throw another scenario, maybe not the number 3 pick, but I mean, I could see Lindholm wanting to play with Johnny. But if you could get a Cole Sillinger or a Kent Johnson out of that organization, I would not be upset.
I don't see Columbus wanting to do that either.
Well, why the fuck did you sign Gaudreau then?
Well, I think they'd be much happier with Cole Sillinger, Kent Johnson, Adam Fantilli, and Gaudreau than to have and build around that as opposed to bringing in a 28, 29-year-old player who's not going to be there like at his prime, let alone like probably not even a top 6 player when the Fantillis, the Leo Carlsons, the Kent Johnsons, the Cole Cylinders are ready to be top end competing for the cup.
Devin, one thing in those markets like Columbus, you got to sell tickets. And I think you can sell tickets to an offensive guy like Gaudreau. It's going to be harder to sell tickets to come see Elias Lindholm in a maybe non-traditional hockey market or a market where it's tough to get people in the building right now.
Okay. Would there be let's just
Kevin, I think if you listen to Conroy though, Conroy thinks they're going for it. So I don't think that a futures deal is going to happen right now.
Then if you're trading Lindholm, you're going to have to get now pieces for him if you're in that window. And I mean, does Carolina have? I mean, Carolina to have that who has the now pieces for that to work? Like
it doesn't make sense to trade if you're in win now mode. You sign Elias Lindholm for whatever the fuck he wants. You're not like you're making yourself worse by trading off Elias Lindholm. It doesn't make sense. If you're doing a reload, then it's going to be you're going to get a a top 6 forward and then a middle 6 forward within that, because you're the forward position is already very middling as is right now, right? We just went through it. Yeah, you have Mangiapane and Dubé within that middle 6, both underperformed last year. You're willing to bet that they're going to have a bounce back year? I think that Mangiapane will, but then you're also losing a number one center within the organization. It just doesn't make sense.
If they're going to make that deal, Kev, just to kind of go back to your question, I think there's 3 organizations that are in a similar position to Calgary where they think they can make it. Maybe they're disappointed this year and might be looking for guys with change of scenery. I think St. Louis is a possible trade target. I think Carolina could be a possible trade target. And while they don't want to go in division, I think the Kraken and potentially the Rangers.
Why not Minnesota?
I don't know if Minnesota thinks they'd be close enough to take on that deal and re-sign him to what he'd want.
Well, yeah, but I also think with Minnesota, Minnesota's making that move, it's going to be for futures.
That's true. Yeah.
And I know. Okay. So what does St. Louis have now that the Flames could use?
I guess it depends I don't think a lot on the forward side. I think that the Flames could be interested in getting a defenseman off of them. And I think there would be St. Louis also has some interesting prospects there. I think you're kind of going for like maybe Torrey Krug or somebody like that. And I can even see somebody like Jacob Verana and a Krug package.
Oh, I would love to see that as a Canucks fan because I think that just makes the Flames worse.
Yeah,
or bust.
I could see the Flames doing something with the Rangers and bringing in Trocheck and something.
See, that makes more sense to me.
I think the Rangers need the kind of player that Lindholm is. I think the Flames could use a centerman like Trocheck. I think that those are 2 teams that maybe were disappointed this year and might see guys that need to be moved around.
See, I think that the other thing that Conroy talked about is getting younger.
Yeah.
And I think if they're moving Lindholm, they're looking at. I don't think they're looking at players in their late 20s, early 30s. I think they're looking at players who are on the precipice of becoming sort of top 6 players and moving upwards. And then as opposed to players like a Torrey Krug who's in his 30s, Parayko who's in his 30s, Trocheck is 29. Like I just don't see
and I took what Craig said a little bit differently because I listened to many different interviews he did, and Craig was kind of saying that Brad's philosophy was fill spots with veterans. I mean, how many times do we see them invite Reeder or different guys to camp? Lewis, Richie. It was fill the spot with the young guy. And what I have interpreted from everything that Craig's been saying is let's leave the spot open for young guys. It doesn't mean we're not going to bring in older guys because any team that's going deep has a core of guys in their late 20s and 30s. I think the Flames know they're going to need some of those guys in there, but I think it's instead of bringing in Trevor Lewis or instead of bringing in Richie, let's leave the spot open, and if nobody can take it, then we'll go find the veteran for it.
Now, see if I'm looking at some based off of how I'm reading it, and you could be right there, Dan. Colorado, you build a package around Alex Newhook.
Yeah, I don't know Colorado. I don't know. Colorado wants to do that deal. Maybe.
Oh, they
desperately need a second. They desperately need another top 6 center.
Yeah, but I don't know
if you're running a top 2 lines with a down the middle of McKinnon, Lindholm, you have Lindholm basically as your. You could build Lindholm, Lehkonen pairing that can basically shut down a team.
Yeah, that's possible.
And then with that, you could Sam Girard's probably available too.
I wouldn't want
especially with the way Bowen Byram stepped up.
I wouldn't want Sam Girard.
Like I think if we look at a Flames team or any team, if you look at even the last 4 teams, or 3 teams standing now, they have that good veteran core. And I think if we look at, guys that we would look back at if the Flames are hoisting the cup next year, guys like Coleman, guys like Backlund, guys like, Lindholm, Toffoli, those guys that have been around, I think are going to be the guys you need to stabilize yourself in the playoffs.
And if honestly, like I know Sean, you said that Colton Parayko is in his 30s. He's 30 years old. Like right now, you've already hitched your wagon to Kadri and Huberdeau. I think that Colton Parayko is one of the ones. He's a right-hand shot. Could quarterback your second power play. If you trade Hannafin, then you still have a top four that's very formidable. And Parayko is built for the playoffs.
Are you bringing back again? We haven't asked this, but is Chris Tanev coming back, or do you
right
put
price.
him in a package with a Lindholm? Like
Like
do you throw a Lindholm and a
The Flames
Tanev?
don't have to make decisions on bringing back anyone major in terms of free agents this year. But they have a good more than a handful of players that they have to make decisions on going into next summer.
And I think that they know now from being burned, they can't let any of these guys walk for nothing.
Yeah.
Well, and like Chris Tanev is one that you can walk for nothing because he's 33 years old. He's a heart and souler, and he's injury prone. So it's one of those ones where you could just hang on to him for one more run.
So, Devin, I think that Tanev will stay with the team. I think Stetcher kind of replaced him as an everyday defenseman with Shillington coming back. And I think you'll have Tanev almost as your number 7, that when he's available, we'll put him in the lineup. But when he's not, we can move guys up and down.
I love bringing Stetcher in. That guy was probably the hardest working Flame.
Are you going to scoop the poop for him? Did you not see that tweet?
No, he was 22 year older.
He was yelling at people for not scooping the poop of their dogs.
And then
landmines everywhere.
The guy that I think then becomes an influx is Michael Stone. But if you listen to his exit interviews, he doesn't want to go anywhere. I predict that the Flames had some depth issues on defense this year, of bringing up guys like the 2 or 3 guys they're bringing up from the AHL that really didn't work. Mackey, I don't think worked. I think that Stone starts the year in the AHL, wears a C down there, and then he's told he's that first call up when and if Tanev's hurt.
Well, I'll go one further with you, Dan. I could actually see Michael Stone part of the coaching staff eventually with the Wranglers. Like I could see like him. I'm serious in terms of like just start to kind of put him in a.
It sounds like he doesn't want to leave Calgary, so I think he'll take whatever job the nice man offers. And right now, I think he's still got some gas in the tank as a player. But you're right, Kev. I think like Stajan, whether it's with the Hitmen, whether it's with the Wranglers, whether it's with the Flames, I think he's a guy that we'll see a lot of. I mean, heck, how long has Connie been in the organization? 2 decades, maybe 2 decades from now. Michael Stone's the next GM.
Yeah. I think it'd be ridiculous if he didn't bring back shootout specialist Nick Ritchie.
You gotta, I look, I know I have legitimate superstars on my lineup like Elias Lindholm and Tyler Toffoli, who leads the team in goals, but I'm going to go with a Nick Ritchie in a goal that I need to get myself into a playoff spot. That's
I don't think Ritchie's going to be a hot commodity come July 1st. I could see him potentially getting a tryout deal and say, hey, if nobody takes that deal, you're coming. If nobody takes that roster spot, you're coming back.
Is he going to Houston, or where is he going?
Are we talking about your previous prediction of the Houston AHL team, or are we talking about the Coyotes moving to Houston? Which version of Houston is this?
He's going back to the Coyotes, and he's going to play in Houston.
Okay, well,
the Ritchie players are going to reunite in Mullet Arena.
Just remember, the Coyotes have committed to the Mullet for one more year.
Yeah.
I think, I think that there's a lot of turnover that could happen here. But again, I think for the Flames, they're not going to move all 7 of those guys. Like, I think they need to get a coach in. They need to get that coach talking to players. And I would not be surprised if one of these names moves to the draft. I think if you're trying to maximize capital and a guy's not coming back, moving him to the draft could be Conroy's best move there.
And there's been a lot of talk about moving down within this draft as well, if you think that a player you like is going to slide. So that could be a potential.
Yep. And, when we're talking about centermen as well and losing top centermen, I think there's also guys you could go out and target as free agents, almost as sort of like we talked about the placeholder coach, sort of the placeholder potentially centerman for 1 or 2 years. And I'm looking at a guy like Taves or O'Reilly, guys that are older, but you might say, hey, we can stick you in as a number 2 center at a decent 1-year deal until we get somebody else in there.
I mean, we never really talked about where Ryan O'Reilly fits within the Toronto organization. But I don't see him going anywhere, to be honest with you. I think he stays in Toronto.
I agree.
Like, I know that some people had him pegged to Chicago, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think at this stage, I think he would rather win a cup than babysit little Connor right now.
Really depends on what happens before the draft, but I think that is more than likely the situation.
Yeah.
Another guy that's sorry, go ahead.
I don't know what Taze has left in him, and I'm sorry, I can't in good conscience. I can't in good conscience say that I want Jonathan Taze on my team. I understand all of those Stanley Cups, but that comes with a bit of a black mark for me.
I think if you could get Taves as sort of the next Corey Perry and a Corey Perry money, I think you can make it work.
I think if he's going anywhere for that, and it's not a contender, he's going back home.
A couple of guys of the I could see that for sure. A couple of guys the Flames could be interested in if they do move Lindholm or Backlund are looking for a center. What about Jonathan Drouin out of Montreal, who's a UFA, 28 years old? Or another guy who's an RFA is Pierre-Luc Dubois in Winnipeg. Yeah. I don't know that Dubois is going to be motivated to stay there, so I wonder if the Flames could pry him away.
I think Dubois wants either to Montreal or back into the States and all that, so where taxes are less.
What about Max Domi?
Max Domi would be a good fit, but he'd be a third liner for me.
Yeah, and I wonder. The way he's talking, it sounds like he's found some home in Dallas. That should be a nominee for trade of the year, to be honest with you.
I think if you're looking for a third line center, I'd rather go with the guy like JT Compher.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good guy too.
And Eric Holla, is that how you say his last name? Yeah. He's had a heck of a year in New Jersey. I could see him being a guy that gets a big deal this year from some team. And I could see if Calgary's desperate for a center, not that I think he's the right guy, but I could see them throwing some cash at him.
And he might want to go to the Western Conference because he's been eliminated by the same team 3 years in a row. So
yeah. I think, while we're talking about guys like Lindholm and what we heard, I think we have to remember those exit interviews were coming off a frustrating Daryl Sutter era. And I would question if Lindholm would have the same reaction once a new coach is hired and Conroy's in. And I mean, we heard Weegar very negative in those interviews, and already we're hearing great things when he's been asked about Conroy's GM. So I think, the Flames really have to take another look at who wants to stay and who doesn't, but we can't do that till all the pieces are in place.
Yeah.
Yeah. But before we wrap it up here, I'm curious to go around the horn on who everybody thinks the next captain of the team is going to be.
With no roster changes, I'm going to say Backlund.
I can't say that until I know who the coach is.
I don't think the coach fucking matters, man. I think that the
team, but it could be Backlund. But if Backlund doesn't want to come back, it's
as of right now, the roster construction as of right now, Rasmus Andersson.
That's where I'm going as well.
Interesting.
I think he's young enough that you can build around. He's got a little bit of bite to him, so he's going to bite. He's going to bite back when needed, and I think it fits. There's no one up front that I would throw it on, just because of age. In the Canadian market, I think you need to have someone who you can build around.
My only worry with Anderson is he's not as media friendly as I think they'd like a Canadian market captain to be.
That is true, but I don't think that's in the Calgary market. I don't think that's a major issue, as big an issue as it is, say, in Edmonton or Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal.
I think it could become that if they think they're going to be a deep playoff team, though.
And
but I think he can learn that.
If that's what you're worried about, then I've heard whispers of Mackenzie Weegar.
There you go.
Yeah, those might be two. Sean and I have had our arguments about this, but I mean, I don't think we disagree on that. Rasmus Anderson has taken a step, but I think he's taken a further step than maybe Sean has.
Rasmus Anderson is a very good sort of. I've said this for so many times. This Flames blue line reminds me a lot of the 2011 Canucks blue line, where they've got a bunch of number twos. I just Rasmus Anderson is right on the precipice of being like a true, makes me feel comfortable to call him a number one. He's not there yet.
And maybe that's where he's not ready for the C yet. I mean, maybe you got to wait for him to take that step.
Well, if that's the case, then I don't know if you put a C on anybody this year, even though everybody wants it.
That's where I'm at. That's
said
kind of where I'm at. It's if it had Conroy not said that, I would have said there's not going to be another captain. But if you're going to force the hand and say we're going to name a captain, Rasmus Anderson's your best bet.
If they want a veteran guy, I think it'll be Backlund or Kadri with the current makeup. If they're willing to go with a younger guy, I think Anderson could be that guy.
I would go with Backlund as team constructed right now, but I would say that you still need a coach before we see what happens. But Backlund would be the guy. Wouldn't be uncomfortable putting an A on Rasmus Anderson and him under that learning tree.
And I think if that coach is Husker, someone internally, I think they might go with one of the more veteran guys because they know them and they've seen what they're doing in the room. If it's a guy from outside, I have no idea. And at that point, they might defer to Conroy. If you know these guys, who's our captain?
It might even just be a fucking vote because that's what's happened multiple times as well, right?
Well, we put our votes in.
Yeah.
Two for Rasmus.
Before we wrap up, do you guys think Lucic is in the NHL next year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think he's a Flame?
I think he's in Boston.
No.
I think his world championships have saved him.
I have one more topic I want to get into before we wrap up. I want to talk about Matthew Tkachuk.
Alrighty.
I don't think we got time for that, Kev.
Why?
We're over 2 hours.
Oh, are we? Oh, I didn't even realize this. I'm sorry. Well, okay, next week I want to spend some time talking about Matthew. I've got some things to say about Matthew.
This is a teaser.
I know you
the
do.
Old 60s Batman.
I said I don't think we got time.
Maybe I'll make my own video, but I've got some. I think I want to push back at some of the narrative on Matthew Tkachuk. That's all.
Kevin, I'll do my teaser at the 60s Batman. Will the Flames fans have regretted moving Matthew Tkachuk? Will the Florida Panthers be able to win the Stanley Cup? Find out next week. Same Shifts and Pucks time, same Shifts and Pucks channel.
That's
exactly
what I'm going to talk about. But anyway, okay, we'll leave it here. I did not realize we were at 2 hours, or I thought we're. Oh my gosh, it's 9:15. Okay, we'll wrap it up. I didn't know we were at 2 hours.
Time flies when you're fantasy hiring a coach.
Yes. And picking captains and all that. Okay, so how do we
duct tape? I'm going to see on my shirt here.
Yeah.
I'm BeardyConnect03 on Twitter.
You can follow me on Twitter at GordHouse09.
Fireside Chat, you can find us at firesidechat.ca. You can download our podcast wherever fine podcasts are found, and we'll be doing an episode probably this weekend to discuss more about Craig Conroy and the head coach and a lot of the same things we've discussed here.
You can follow Tyler, TNOBLE. Schneids is Christian Schneids, SCHNEIDZ. I am KEVULE. Shifts and Pucks on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network. Thank you for spending 2 hours with us, and we hope you come again very soon. Bye for now.